Friend, enemy, or frenemy? How do Indians view the rise of China and its implications for India's rise? Join the conversation on this important topic by taking the China Challenge survey. The survey has been put together by researchers at the Takshashila Institution. Answer our 10 simple questions and let your voice be heard in shaping India's policy towards China. For more details, log on to www.takshashila.org.in or you can click on the link and take the survey in the show notes. Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಅವ್ರೆ ಕಾಫಿ ಆಯ್ತಾ?
ಆಯ್ತು. ಏನ್ ಸಮಾಚಾರ? ಆರಾಮ?
ಆರಾಮ್. ನಿಮ್ದು?
ಆರಾಮೆಲ್ಲ.
ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋಣ.
All right.
If you're wondering what we're talking about, or if you've tuned into the wrong podcast, let me assure you that no, this is Takshashila's All Things Policy, and we, Bharat and Suman, are here to discuss something that's close to everyone, something that was in the news recently. And so we'll be discussing about Karnataka's state employment of local candidates in the industries, factories, and other establishment bill 2024. So this bill was proposed, and within a day it was also withdrawn. And it basically guaranteed a reservation for locals in Karnataka, up to 50% in certain roles and up to 75% in certain other roles. And so for Suman and I, it would have opened up a lot of exciting career opportunities. But so we are foregoing all of those opportunities, and we are here to argue that this was a pretty bad idea. So welcome, Suman.
Namaskara.
Namaskara. So to get started, now this has not been just the case with Karnataka. A lot of other states also have been thinking about reservations in the private sector. Jharkhand, Andhra, Haryana have all implemented this and tried to implement this. And in Haryana, it's also been the court has struck it down, and in the other states also it's being challenged. So what are the reasons for these policies, such kind of policies gaining traction, and what is the demand from the locals for such interventions?
So my feeling is that the political economy is rife with such ideas because first there is this fear of outsiders taking local jobs across various skill levels, right? Because the economy is integrated in a lot of ways, because we have seen a lot of movement of people. I mean, not as much as we'd like, but there is a lot of movement of people across the country from poorer places to more prosperous places. Okay, so, and we are not talking only about tech skills here, right? We are not talking about the high-end tech workers that you and I normally encounter rather. But this is prevalent across society. You see the plumbers, you see delivery people, you see factory workers everywhere coming from different parts of the country. I have also heard of people in coffee estates, tea estates, people working on farms, etc., where the migrant labor or migrant population is heavily used because they come at a lower cost and they reduce a lot of, they reduce labor prices in the market itself. So this, I think, has created some kind of fear amongst people, and it has given a lot of our politicians something to wield, something to talk about, something to make an issue about. Okay, and coupled with this, I think, is the fact that through the liberalization or all these years, the last few decades, we have seen a lot of people coming out of poverty. But again, this has been fairly iniquitous. That is, people with education, people with decent education, people with access to health, access to opportunities have done fairly better than others. So there is this winners and losers. Some people who gained a lot, some people who lost in the process. So this has also created some kind of ill will amongst people, and this becomes an easy emotive issue of uh, a lot of people, and politicians look at this as a favorable thing to pitch because it's fairly simple and it speaks to people's minds or people's hearts more than minds, right? And along with this, I think, comes the fear of dilution of identity. And because you have so many people coming in, there are different languages, cultural norms change, and all of this. So this also may have created something. And finally, it's the language, right? Because of late, we have seen a lot of Hindi imposition. I mean, I don't know how much of it actually percolates down, but there is news of Hindi imposition in the southern states. This, I think, has caused some kind of a negative sentiment amongst local people. And so the environment becomes ripe for these kind of, nativist policies as such. Do you think there are other things to this, Bharat?
No, I think that's kind of broadly the sentiment that you see a lot of people who are coming into
Your place.
your place, the place that you called home, and the demographics are gradually changing over a period of time. Right? So if I look at myself, 20 years ago, there were not as many people from North India in Bangalore, and you see that gradual shift. And the very simple explanation would be that you see a lot of people who are coming here and taking jobs over here, right? But there's a lot of a deeper understanding that you can look at this. So it's jobs is not something that is there's a fixed number of them, and if someone comes from outside and takes this job, it's not like someone else over here has lost that same job, right? So that's not how it works, and I think we can dig into some of these
I think
issues.
people who are trying to put these kind of ideas out are not either get the idea but don't want to do it, or don't get the idea that there are
it's not a fixed pie
number.
that you need to split up between whoever is there to take a job. So let's first come to the test of constitutionality. So a lot of other states, like we discussed, have tried to implement these, and the courts have found, in some cases, have struck down this law, and others it's being challenged. And I think the basic idea is that it violates some of the freedoms that are laid out in the Constitution. The freedom to carry on any economic activity, for example, to run a business, or as you see fit. That freedom is curtailed when you say that you have to employ 50% of people belonging who can speak a certain religion, or who are
Speak a certain language.
Yeah. So I think that is one basic test that such laws fail. And broadly also, you have this idea that you want to create one nation, one market, and this kind of comes in the way of such policies come in the way of that. So you don't have free movement. You already have a lot of challenges in doing business, and restricting access to labor and creates further hurdles for
like we've been speaking about. Creation of one large economy has been the goal always, to remove impediments towards doing business. The GST also came about because we wanted to create one nation, one market kind of a thing. Okay, but that is still work in progress. And as we integrate more people into the formal economy, as we reap the benefits of scale, it becomes imperative that we facilitate free movement of labor. However, policies like this actually damage that motive or that intention that we have. And more so, I think the larger issue when we talk about constitutionality, or when we talk about this, not so much from a business sense, but more from a societal sense, is that social cohesion will become a casualty. We already have a lot of divisions based on caste, religion. There are a lot of impediments for people to be employed basis caste and religion, etc. People face discrimination of various kinds. Adding this one other thing of language actually damages or brings a lot of discredit to the efforts of integration, etc. And of course, most of our listeners would have some kind of understanding of diversity, inclusion, and all of this. Lack of diversity in workplaces will also create a lot of social fissures. As we all know that the more we interact with people who are not like us, the more understanding we get of them, and therefore whatever biases that we have might actually break down. So, but if you are creating an environment where you cannot respect or cannot see value in having somebody different from you, then I think it's fairly harmful for society as a whole. Right? So we've spoken about constitutionality, spoken about this whole thing about the country as a whole. But specifically when we talk about businesses, when we talk about the impact on the economy, we're looking at it from a very, very transactional or economic lens, putting at it. What do you think consequences of these kind of policies are?
So when you look at why enterprises come to or set up in Karnataka or in any place for that matter, it's probably the available talent pool, which is the one of the most important reasons. And then you can think of the weather, infrastructure as other factors which bring companies here. Now, when you have so Bangalore has benefited a lot from this. We have had an open culture, welcoming. Karnataka for a long time, people thought of them as welcoming other cultures, other people who don't speak your language, also to come and stay here and work with you and alongside you, right? So, and you've seen Karnataka's GST contributions, for example, which have grown massively in the past couple of decades. It's second only to Maharashtra, which is a much larger state, a bigger economy, has always been one of the most industrialized states in India. And Karnataka has been able to reach where it is today. And a large part of that also goes to the contribution of these companies which have come and set up shop here. And when you look at the people working in these companies, if even if they're not people from Karnataka, they have contributed to the economy, and the taxes that they're paying eventually contribute to the welfare of the entire state. So it's not something that you can think of as they're coming here and taking something away from the state. They're also contributing in a lot of other ways as well.
True. The local economy is benefited because they spend a lot of money. They spend whatever money they earn, and therefore the other locals within the state are actually running the shop. Now, if we have a policy like this, which mandates only Kannadigas in certain positions, it will only mean that all of these people at some point will either stop coming here or will move out of here, and that means contraction of the economy, right? And that is something that we can't afford to have at this point in time. But also, I was thinking that as we're moving more towards a knowledge economy, knowledge-based economy, we're transitioning, it is only natural that all businesses will source talent from across the globe and not just across the country, right? So having such rules such as domicile or language proficiency will deeply constrain the ability of a firm to stay competitive. And that is only going to backfire for the state itself. Right? So that's one thing we can talk about.
So, and not just that, right? So you are also, when you have a lot of investor summits and all that the state government is organizing, and you're trying to compete with other states and attracting investment. And when you have laws like this, which put restrictions on who they can hire, then businesses have some kind of an incentive to move to other states, which might be more welcoming of talent. Actually, or free movement of talent.
The day we saw this bill in the news, we also saw a politician from another state actually saying, welcome to Telangana or whatever, right? So you can immediately see that competition between states, and your state is going to lose because of this kind of a policy.
Right. And so we've looked at the impact on companies moving here, the impact on the economy. So as an individual or as society, how do you think it's going to, what will be the second order effects of such a policy being implemented? So directly, you might think that in the short term, okay, there might be job opportunities for locals, but over a longer period, what might be the second order?
Yeah, impact? I mean, first off, the first thing that we can think about is how does a workplace get affected, right? So when you have people coming into your workplace only because you have reserved that position because of language or domicile, there is immediately a resentment amongst other people, and this will create a backlash, and it actually impacts working relationships. It impacts any kind of social interactions between people, and that is not something that we really want. And like I said, the spending capacity of people who come in here again. If that is removed, there is a contraction in the economy. And really, we don't need any kind of prizes to guess who will suffer the most in this, right? And again, implementation, right? There are so many things around that implementation. Do you think this policy can actually be implemented?
Well, there are so many open, it's not foolproof. So you don't know. It's very ambiguous who qualifies as a Kannadiga, so or a local, right? So you need to be born here, you need to be domiciled here, you need to have Kannada as a second language on your, I think, school marks card. If you don't have that, then you have to take a test. Now, who will administer that test is again an open question.
Again, that test thing will become a business by itself, because you will have mushrooming of all these kind of test centers, maybe.
Right, and if you have a company, so they have some exemptions, right? So you can't obviously mandate this and then expect everyone to comply. So they have said that there can be exemptions if a company cannot hire locals and they are not able to find that talent, then they can get an exemption and hire people from outside the state. Now, who grants these exemptions and on what criteria these exemptions are granted? So these are all very vague, and it's subjective. It can be
used for bribes, used for rent seeking.
So there are a lot of opportunities in this where it's really hard to enforce this. The state will not have the capacity to actually go and monitor every company that's out there and see that they have so many locals being employed, and do they have the ability to find local talent or not, and then to certify that. And so implementation will be a nightmare, and there'll be so many ways in which this can be gamed.
Yeah, so that's why we always say that, intentions are not what we measure a policy by, but the outcomes, right? And so this is really going against the grain of that. But we recognize that there are problems. We recognize the sentiment behind this thing. And we also recognize that this is not the best way to go about solving the problems that we probably have. So then what is the best way, right? We recognize that unemployment is a problem across the country, and the government will use every lever it has to and because it becomes an election issue, it will use every lever it has to solve, or at least to be seen solving as the problem. But in the long run, what do you think are some of the solutions that the government can actually focus on?
So I was thinking maybe we should stop telling everyone that Bangalore has such good weather.
Oh yeah, that will actually be a great way to
so people start,
and we can talk about traffic.
Because, the traffic is so bad, and the weather
you should not come here.
Yeah, it's been raining cats and dogs, and the roads. Anyway, so coming back to the point, so it's probably the state needs to invest in human capital, education, health. So when there are job opportunities, empower the locals or whoever you think needs those jobs to be able to get those jobs which are available.
Yeah. Right? Also, we've seen in the Karnataka has a very good history of making education and healthcare among the better performing states in the country with respect to education and healthcare. So the government in Karnataka really needs to focus on making this better, right? In terms of, say, primary education or even higher education, we need more universities, more private universities, more opportunities for people to avail of education, of ensuring health outcomes are good before we move to education. And so that people from the state are not just constrained to the state. So if you say that Kannada is your language, you will study only in Kannada, that means you are limiting people to the state itself. So if the government makes enough policies or does enough push to get education outcomes better, and to ensure that people are equipped with good education so that they can, avail or exploit opportunities that they get across the world, I think it can consider itself doing a fair job on that, right?
Right. I think there's also, like, any kind of a language imposition is not always, it's hard to impose something that you don't speak just because it's the law, right? So when Hindi has been imposed in parts of the country, you've seen a lot of backlash towards that as well. So mandating that someone needs to learn this language to be able to stay here or get a job, it's very difficult to make that happen. I guess the way you can actually get people to, and especially when English is largely the language of business in a lot of jobs, and at
your
least in the
ticket
tech
to
sector and
yeah,
all of that, right?
your
So
ticket to prosperity.
so so the way you can promote the language is to say make it promote films, culture, and other kinds of areas where the language has some soft power, where people see the
Value.
cultural value, the heritage, and all of that they can experience while knowing the language. So it should come voluntarily than as an imposition from a law, right? So, and that can that'll actually make people want to learn it because they.
I think the cultural or the resentment people feel towards outsiders because of the fact that they don't know the language and their language is getting diminished, or for whatever other reasons, those things have to be, if you want to actually stem that thing, the perceived slight to your language, you can do a lot of other things, like you said, films, culture, all of that, as also um, probably in your education system itself, if you introduce some parts of language which are already, I think the state already does, but if you introduce some parts of language for uh, off the cuff, I can think, how about if you have some Kannada learning for medical students who have to serve in the state? It helps them, right, to know the language. While you can't mandate it, I think introducing those kind of things will help with stemming this or with mitigating the side effects or second unintended consequences. And we're also talking about building infrastructure that will create positive externalities. That goes without saying for any kind of policy. If the government is focused on creating infrastructure that actually helps with creating positive externalities, I think it will increase the pool of jobs available or whatever else, improve prospects for businesses, etc. That is one thing that the government can definitely do. These are things that are not seen in the immediate term, that are takes time to think, but those are the only ways that the government needs to actually intervene.
Yeah, I think in conclusion, it's you can't think of it as a fixed pie that there are only so many jobs and someone else is coming and taking away the jobs, because when someone else comes to your state and they're also spending in your state, right? So it's creating a lot of other jobs. So it's expanding the pie rather than just taking away from it. So
that I think is the base of all discussion that we can have.
Yeah, and Karnataka and its people have, I think, had a long history of tolerance and cooperation, and I think that should continue. And
as Kannadigas, I think we should continue with that. And if we want to do that, we have to oppose these kind of policies. Yeah.
And on that note, thank you for listening to us, and we'll see you again.
Namaskara.
Namaskara.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaInst or our website takshashila.org.in.